some of the criticism that we've gotten, like Slate did a piece about us, and a couple other publications have written pieces like this where they say, here's the reason the Babylon Bee is not funny. They're not funny because they're, rather than having their jokes tethered to the truth or reality, their jokes are riding on the back of some political narrative. And so what they're saying is there's fake news that we're attaching our jokes to. So we're promoting fake news with satire that's like riding on the top of that. Does that make sense? Whereas The Onion or left-wing comics are rooted in reality. And I feel like it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, and the validation of that is the fact that our jokes constantly come true. You know, we make these jokes and they come true. It's like, well, there's a reason they come true. It's because that we were onto something. There was a point to the joke that we were making, and reality just caught up to us.
Yeah.
Sometimes within a matter of hours. The Onion's jokes don't come true as often as our jokes. Their jokes aren't as attached to reality as ours are, honestly.
The Onion had two really, really good jokes in the past few years. One was presidency already aging Joe Biden 10 years, and it showed a rotted corpse.
Yeah.
Like, that was good. And then the other one was, this was back in like 2019 or 2020, and it said, naked Andrew Yang appears from time portal to warn us about, AI in the future or whatever. Like, that one was also pretty good.
And this is something I've experienced before too, with just like cracking a joke about something, and it turns out to be true a few years down the line, because these people are generally pretty predictable. But there was a really great Babylon Bee article I want to highlight. Public school student can't read but is already racist at a 12th grade level. I thought that's hilarious. That's a good joke. Now, I don't understand how someone can read that and go like, that's clearly fake news disguised as a punchline. It's like, no, that is very obviously a joke. And so a while ago, as I'm sure you know, and I've brought it up on the show a number of times, Snopes did an extremely pseudo-scientific analysis of Babylon Bee articles where they rewrote the headlines to remove the joke, make it sound like it was an actual story, and then asked people, do you think that this is an actual story? And then based on the number of people who said yes, they totaled them as people who thought the original Babylon Bee headline was a true story. So they said, of course we have to fact check satire.
Snopes highlighted that study. They didn't conduct the study.
Oh, they didn't conduct the study?
Yeah, it was done at some university, and then they republished it, the findings. But they didn't just rewrite our headlines. They literally reworded them so they didn't sound like jokes anymore.
No, they took the jokes out,
they took the joke out, stripped it of its like comedic, structure, and removed the image. And the image is usually like a silly Photoshop, like a fake looking Photoshop or ridiculous outlandish image. They take that away too and just present you with this like, headline that maybe it could be true. I don't know, but it certainly doesn't sound like a joke.
So one example, So one example was, you guys did a bit that was like, and it's with a picture of some news anchor, and it says, God allowed the Mueller report to test our unshakable faith in collusion. And they reworded it as, CNN news anchor Anderson Cooper said his belief that Trump colluded with Russia is unshakable. It will not change regardless of statement or evidence to the contrary. That is a completely different sentence.
Yeah.
And so to ask people if one sounds true, and then when they answer that it does sound true, to apply it to the first statement is just totally dishonest.
I have issues with satire in that I'm concerned when people don't know it's satire. How do you manage that?
With people not knowing it's satire?
Yeah, because if some article comes up and you don't know ahead of time, like this is a satire newspaper, and which is a lot of times why they ask you to put satire on do they, like with your descriptions in like your Twitter or like any other...
I mean, they can. It's labeled satire in the sense that if you actually click on our website, like our tagline is "Fake news you can trust," and like our About Us page is obviously a joke, but we don't put on every article "This is satire" and then close the article with "What you just read was satire." We're not just. It kind of kills the joke to be constantly reminding people this is a joke. So you can't do that really.
Yeah.
So you have to just present it. And people either get it or they don't. And a lot of people don't.
I want to point out real quick, you mentioned selection bias for The Onion. So I pulled up the Wayback Machine and I looked at a few 10-year-old archival posts. And they're not particularly funny, to be honest. There's a few ones. And I think there's something interesting I see here, because some of these do make me want to chuckle. Super Bowl veterans much more prepared for big game's unique stresses. Rookies often rattled by pools of boiling blood, scything blades, psychosexual hallucinations. Okay... That one's at least a little edgy, and it gave me a chuckle. And you look at the modern stuff now, and it's kind of just like, there's one, it's like kill your dad, and it's like a woman like waving something at her dad. I'm like, it's just not
doing
there.
comedy now. You're tiptoeing through a minefield. Comedians are literally getting attacked on stage. Chappelle's attack.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Chris Rock was slapped in the face. Other people. There's stories about that. There was just one in the New York Post a couple of weeks ago. About how it's not just you've heard about a lot of these cases, but there's cases happening at smaller comedy clubs too, where comedians are feeling like they need armed security to go on stage and make jokes because they're going to offend somebody who's going to get violent.
Yeah. Or the right to keep and bear arms.
Right.
And defend themselves.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned this term that Snopes uses, which is labeled satire, which I just also want to highlight. There's something a little bit sneaky there, right? Like, this isn't obviously satire. It's labeled satire.
Right. They claim
but it's still
satire.
like, it leaves the question of whether you guys intend it to be satire or not.
That's intentional.
Yeah.
That's intentional.
Or like a news organization that's masked as a satire organization.
Well, because their position is, and they haven't changed it, their position is that we are claiming to be a satire site, so that we can mislead people.
Yeah.
How does that even make sense?
It's a claim. New York Times described us as a far-right misinformation site that sometimes traffics in misinformation under the guise of satire.
Wow.
So like a comedian. That'd be like that's a long way of saying it's a comedian.
Right. Under the guise of satire, though, we're putting it on. We're wearing the costume. We're claiming we're satire.
But it says
not.
satire on the website. It says fake news at the
Yes.
top of the website.
Well,
Yeah,
and also
pretty
that,
clear.
like he said, the pictures that go along with the articles
Yeah.
are clearly photoshopped.
There's a lot of context clues.
Yeah,
for you. A lot of
it's
context
usually like
clues.
a setup punchline formula in the headline.
Like if people are not discerning enough to understand the difference between reality and fantasy, it's not my fault. I can't lower the bar to hook the idiots.
There's a big
to
difference
produce.
too, by the way.
Human bot theory. It's not the internet, it's the people.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between, a fake news site, and this is what they're trying to lump us in with. You'll see a fake news site that pops up, and they want to get clicks. They do a story about how Kevin Hart dies in car accident, and that's the headline. Kevin Hart dies tragically in car accident. Well, it didn't happen, and that's not a joke. It's not funny. They're just
a lie.
making up a fake headline. It's a lie, and it's a lie that gets clicks because people are like, "Oh my God, did Kevin Hart die?" And then they share it. So, when we write a joke, that's not what we're not just trying to like throw something out there that might get clicks. There's a point. There's a punchline. And the whole thing ties together. The headline, the image, everything, it all ties together. So, you're never going to be able to get 100% of your audience to understand that you're doing satirical jokes.
you guys don't remember the legendary Babylon Bee article? Kevin Hart died.
No.
You guys, it was
Don't
huge. It went
remember that.
viral. It
Yeah,
was
no
really
Tragic.
it spread
Kevin
fake
Hart
news,
dies
yeah.
in car accident. That's our best headline.
Yeah.
Did you guys get banned off Twitter? Did Babylon Bee get banned off Twitter? There was some drama about it a couple months ago or something.
Babylon Bee did a joke. Well, so the USA Today named Rachel Levine Woman of the Year.
Oh, right.
And Babylon Bee responded to that. We did a joke about how Rachel Levine had been picked as our Man of the Year. And Twitter didn't like that very much. So, yeah, we got reported for hateful conduct, and we were told to delete the tweet.
Wow.
And basically, instead of them just taking it down, which, to my thinking, if they have a problem with this tweet, they can take it down. They don't have to force me to like bend the knee and admit that I did something wrong. But they want us to say that we engaged in hateful conduct and acknowledge that and delete the tweet and take it down. And so what we've done, we've been in Twitter jail for 3 months because we've refused to.
Oh, awesome.
But as soon as Elon makes that purchase.
As soon as Elon makes that purchase, we'll see. I mean, he's given us no assurances, but I would expect that if he does go through, if the deal does go through and Elon Musk takes over Twitter, then I would expect that
So I pulled
situations like ours would be corrected. Well, we'll see.
I pulled up The Onion from September 13th, 2001.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
You're going way back now.
That's
Yeah.
when I was reading it a
And
lot.
this one, actually, I kind of think it's funny. Guy's Gone Wild, and it's a fat dude pulling his shirt up with stars over his nipples.
Yeah.
Other than that, it is not particularly funny in my
That sucker
opinion.
Jesus has forgiven me for some pretty bad sins.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Like, and then this article right here, it's just like Congressman admits to sexual relationship. That doesn't even sound like satire.
right.
Yeah.
That's just like,
Not at this point.
I don't even know if it is, to be honest.
They were
Like, it's
doing
literally just saying Gordon Graham admits to an affair. It's like, okay.
It's kind of like, have you guys been parodying Putin much these days? Like stuff Putin's up to and Putin like eating ice cream and all that crap.
Mostly Biden, not so much Biden.
Yeah, not so much food.
Yeah, that I got one here from The Onion in 2001. Starving bandage bin Laden offers U.S. one last chance to surrender. And I mean, that was, to me, it was like crying. And I was working at Ground Zero at that
Yeah.
period of my life, like smelling the wreckage, whatever it was, the bodies or the and it was still hilarious because it wasn't hateful. I mean, they're not doing it to hurt people.
Right.
It's like you gotta enjoy life, even the chaos. And soldiers will tell you that too. In the middle of the heat of the battle, you still gotta find humor in like some of the craziest stuff. I guess it's because it's lacking. The argument is that it's lacking context when it's just like a post with no I don't know, what is it on Twitter? There's like no picture or.
But if that were the case, then why wouldn't they conduct an actual reasonable scientifically done analysis of the headlines as they're actually written rather than butchering them and then claiming that because they know.
I just got to point out real quick. I had to frantically click away from The Onion because back in 2000 they had a racial slur on their front page for like 4 days as part of one of their
Really?
jokes.
Yeah, they set the precedent, man.
I'm glad I changed the
Maybe
camera
they were
shot.
a bit more edgy back then. I don't know. I was like, oh, we can't show that.
It was the Wild West, for better or worse. I don't think that it's bad these days. Like, people call it a dystopia and stuff. I just think it's always been this crazy, and now the curtain's been pulled back and we can see the inner workings of the beast.
I think that when they are accusing you of basically hollowing this out and using it as a skin suit, all they're doing is projecting. Because this is what we see them doing with every single institution they touch. That's all they ever do. And they're talking about how you're like conveying a political message but trying to do it with comedy. They're trying and failing to do this with people like Colbert and The Onion. They're doing it incredibly poorly because they have no self-reflection, they have no humility, they can never be wrong. And those are things that are required. You need to be able to make fun of yourself because, if you make fun of yourself, you'll never run out of material.
Right.
They cannot do it, but they're trying. I think they're really jealous of what you're doing at the Babylon Bee. That's kind of
It's
what
possible.
I came up
Well, I
with.
think you undermine them.
Yeah.
They did.
Establishment.
They'd actually make fun of us a little bit. They were kind of like, without naming us, they were making jokes about how they'd been suspended on Twitter and this is their last tweet, they can no longer tweet and they're tweeting that, so they were kind of like
It was just
ironically
what's
tweet.
what's the
And
joke?
the joke was that we were, I guess, like putting it on that we were being suppressed but we still are on Twitter and we can still tweet if we want to or something like that. The joke was that we're faking it. I don't know. It wasn't
It's
really
just all
abundantly
flatser.
clear. It wasn't abundantly clear, and no one got it because no one knew what they were referring to. Like,
Exactly.
their audience has no familiarity with what's going on with us
Right.
and Twitter. So it's just kind of like it got no engagement, no reaction.
Yeah.
Well, and so, Lydia, you made a really good point about projection, and this is something I kind of want to talk about for a moment here. When I write a joke, or someone pitches a joke to me for Freedom Tunes, or I write a rough concept that I want to shop around to friends, nobody goes, I like the political point you're making, you should make that one. It's like, they'll either go, I don't like that one, or, oh, that's funny, you should do it, right? So people will still discern whether something is funny or not, even if they agree with it politically. And I know that, I've spoken with people at Babylon Bee who have told me that, the headlines will get shot down all the time, and then you try to come up with the one that's funniest. And so what they don't realize is when we're writing jokes, we're not sitting down going, how are we going to get them? Like, how are we going to get the other side? It's just something comes to your mind that you think is funny, and then you end up producing it. But that's not how they write their humor.
No, and that,
so
by the way,
they think we're doing what they're doing.
Real quick, I just pulled up the Babylon Bee, and the first thing I see is Nancy Pelosi recommends avoiding pain at the pump by becoming a millionaire through insider trading.
my gosh.
That's really good,
That's awesome.
and even the left should find that funny. Everyone knows Nancy Pelosi is like that Pelosi stock tracker.
January 6th, the musical. I
Right.
need to
Yeah.
watch this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Did you?
Uh,
what were you?
Well, what I was going to say is, the only consideration when you're writing a headline, you're pitching a headline is it funny? It's not like, oh, does it make the point that we want to make? Well, that's really secondary to is it funny? It's got to be funny first. You got to lead with that. And where they want to get your head, because this is the criticism that we have, is that we've engaged in a hateful conduct with the Rachel Levine joke, right? They want you thinking to yourself, am I making fun of someone who's beneath me? Am I punching down at someone who's marginalized and oppressed while I'm privileged?
That person in a very high position of government.
Yeah.
The white male high-ranking government official. Am I punching down at that person, right? But that's where they want your head at. They want you thinking in those terms. I'm like, I'm not sexist or racist. I don't think people are beneath me. Like, imagine thinking to yourself.
Yeah.
Imagine thinking to yourself, you know what? I shouldn't joke about those people.
They're
They're
beneath
beneath
me.
me.
We're working
They're
on
beneath me.
Yeah.
That's so
Yikes.
condescending. Like, we should be able to joke about each other indiscriminately, right? So having to put your head in that space, I think, is really unhealthy. But that's where their comedy writers are at. They're like, oh, I'm a white male with privilege writing jokes. I've got to be very careful about all the people I could be punching down at.
Yeah, I can't
So
stand it when
we're working
white,
on a video game,
Man.
and in the video game, characters can be randomly generated as any race, and there's going to be a character customization menu. So we made the joke, like, if we made an anti-racist mode that took all of the left's ideology and applied it to the racialization of the characters in this game, like, it really helps you understand just how racist they are.
Yeah.
Like, what if their view of people's race was applied to a video game, actually quantified,
The game would be banned.
The game would
Yeah.
be banned instantly because
Yeah.
you'd be
Right.
like,
It'd be racist.
well, the idea is like, if we removed the stereotypes or inverted them, it exposes just how racist they really are. Like the idea that white people are privileged and have all these special benefits. If you actually enacted that in the game, then characters based on the race you choose for your character would have different stats right away. It's already like, can they jump higher, not jump higher? I'm not going to get into how awfully racist it would be, but we could not apply anti-racism to the game because it's equally as racist as being just stereotypically racist.
Right. And they want you to think of the world in those terms when you're writing jokes. It's like, well, can't joke about women. Women are beneath me. They're beneath me on the power structure because I'm a man. It's like, come on.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.